I live a pretty quiet life out here in rural Missouri. Nothing much ever happens. The days just kind of bleed into one another, you know. Same old routine. Wake up, make coffee, look out the kitchen window at the backyard. But that all changed last Monday. That was the day I first saw it. It was just after sunrise. The fog was still clinging to the grass. My eyes were still adjusting, so at first I thought it was just a trick of the light, maybe a weird shadow cast by the old oak tree. But I kept looking, and the shape didn't change. It was a figure, a person, standing perfectly still at the far end of my yard, right by the rickety wooden fence that separates my property from the dense woods beyond. I couldn't make out any details. It was just a tall, slender silhouette against the morning mist. I squinted, trying to see a face, clothes, anything, but it was just a shape. It didn't move, not a twitch. I watched it for a good 10 minutes while I sipped my coffee, my heart starting to beat a little faster than usual. Who would be standing in my backyard at 6 in the morning? I told myself it was probably just a neighbor who'd lost a dog, or maybe some kids pulling a prank. I finished my coffee, got ready for work, and by the time I left, the sun was fully up, the fog was gone, and so was the figure. I breathed a sigh of relief. Weird, but probably nothing. I pretty much forgot about it for the rest of the day. Tuesday morning, same routine. Wake up, stumble to the kitchen, start the coffee. I glanced out the window and my blood ran cold. It was back, but it wasn't by the fence anymore. It was closer. It was standing right next to that big oak tree in the middle of the yard. That's a good 50 feet closer to my house. My hands started to shake. This wasn't a prank. It was standing in the exact same pose as the day before, perfectly still, a dark shape against the green of the lawn. I could feel my pulse thudding in my ears. I grabbed my phone and zoomed in with the camera, but the image was just as indistinct. A blurry, dark form with no discernible features. It was like looking at a void in the shape of a person. I didn't go to work that day. I couldn't. I spent the entire morning just staring out the window, watching it. The figure never moved. The sun rose higher, birds sang, a squirrel ran up the oak tree, practically brushing past the figure's leg. It didn't react. It was like a statue. But I knew it wasn't. Statues don't move from the fence to the middle of the yard overnight. Around noon, I finally worked up the courage to call the police. I tried to sound calm, but my voice was trembling. I told the dispatcher there was a trespasser in my yard who wouldn't leave. A patrol car showed up about 20 minutes later. I met the officer at the front door and pointed him toward the backyard. "He's right there, by the tree," I said, my voice barely a whisper. The officer walked around the side of the house. I watched from the kitchen window, my heart in my throat. He spent a few minutes walking around the yard, kicking at the grass, looking up at the tree. Then he came back to the front door, looking confused. "Ma'am," he said, "there's no one out there. The yard's completely empty. No footprints in the soft soil either, besides mine." I stared at him, bewildered. I ran back to the kitchen window and looked. He was right. The yard was empty. The figure was gone. The officer was nice about it. He suggested I might be tired, or that the morning light was playing tricks on me. He said to call again if I see anything, but I could tell he thought I was wasting his time. I felt like I was going crazy. Was I imagining it? Was I so lonely out here that my mind was inventing company? Even terrifying company. Even terrifying company. I tried to convince myself that's what it was. I spent the rest of the day with the blinds closed. I didn't want to look outside. I didn't want to know if it would come back. I barely slept that night, jumping at every creak and groan of the old house. Wednesday morning, I was terrified to look, but I had to know. I crept into the kitchen, my whole body tense. I took a deep breath and pulled open the blinds on the window above the sink. My breath caught in my throat. It was there, and it was so much closer. It was standing on my patio, right outside the sliding glass door. It was no more than 5 feet away from me, separated only by a thin pane of glass. I could see it more clearly now, but it only made things worse. It wasn't a person. It was tall and gaunt, its form wrapped in what looked like dark, tattered rags. It had no face. Where a face should be, there was just a smooth, featureless surface, like polished obsidian. It had long, spindly limbs that seemed to end in sharp points rather than hands or feet, and it was just standing there, unmoving, unblinking, because it had no eyes. I stumbled backwards, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle a scream. I fell to the floor, scrambling away from the window, my back hitting the kitchen island. I was hyperventilating. This was real. This thing was real, and it was on my porch. I didn't call the police this time. What would I say? That a faceless monster was on my patio. They'd think I'd lost my mind completely. Maybe I had. I stayed on the kitchen floor for what felt like hours, too scared to move, too scared to even look toward the door again. Eventually, the afternoon sun began to stream through the window, and I risked a peek. It was gone. The patio was empty. There was no sign it had ever been there. That night was the worst yet. I locked every door, every window. I dragged a heavy armchair in front of the sliding glass door. I sat in the living room all night with the lights on, holding a fireplace poker, my eyes darting towards the darkened kitchen. I didn't sleep a wink. I just waited for the sun to rise, filled with a sense of impending doom. This morning, the fourth morning, I was exhausted, running on pure adrenaline and terror. I knew I had to look. I had to know where it was. Slowly, cautiously, I approached the kitchen. The armchair was still pushed against the glass door. The patio beyond was empty, bathed in the soft, grey light of dawn. I let out a shaky breath of relief. Maybe it was gone. Maybe it had finally given up. My eyes drifted to the sliding glass door. The glass was dark, acting like a mirror, reflecting the inside of my kitchen behind me. I saw my own tired, terrified face. I saw the kitchen island. I saw the refrigerator. And I saw the figure. My heart stopped. It wasn't in the reflection of the yard. It was in the reflection of my kitchen. It was standing behind me, right behind me. I haven't turned around. I'm still staring at its reflection in the glass. The faceless, silent thing that spent 3 days crossing my yard. It's inside my house now. And I know, with a horrifying certainty, that this was the last morning I will ever see. If you're watching this, if you ever feel like you're not alone, maybe you aren't. Thank you for listening. Be safe.